Brandon Johnson, every time you see this guy, he always looks like he's on the other side of some kind of controversy, whether it be the allegations of him apparently taking contribution money, people calling for his top aide to get fired due to the comments made about the cops. A lot of people had mixed opinions on that one. Or it could be the fact that while his city is struggling, he's about to take a pay increase along with, 50 other alder people. So a meeting was held the other day in regards to this budget that they have. And needless to say, in light of this meeting, some of the patrons that were there, they weren't all too happy about some of the things that he had to say. And naturally, with that, some of them actually made their feelings known. Like this one lady, I'll give you one good guess. When you start listening to her speak, I'll give you one good guess as to which side she voted for. She had a few issues on her mind that she wanted to address, and she brought them to light now. So I actually just wanted to go over some of what it is that she said and see if maybe there's a couple details that need to be filled out. Because this budget Monday that they have, they need to now figure out what is it that we're going to do with all of this. So this lady, we didn't really catch her name, but she starts off with talking about the things that you could do with the budget is just cutting the amount of money that is given to illegals, making mention that they get free food, free housing, free everything, free schooling, whichever.
Okay, so I got a great way how we can what we can do with this budget. First, let's start with cutting off illegals getting free everything. Free housing, free schooling, free food. Yeah, let's start with that. That'll save us a lot of money. What, $600 million? Let's start there.
So in 2012, Chicago actually became a sanctuary city underneath Rahm Emanuel. And that same pattern continued underneath Lori Lightfoot. And then, of course, it didn't stop with Brandon Johnson. Now, two things about dwelling in a sanctuary city is, for one, they don't pry too much into your immigration status. And two, the city doesn't deny you any services based on your immigration status as well. When you inquire on Chicago.gov's website about what it means for them to be a sanctuary city, then one of the frequently asked questions comes up of, why does Chicago choose not to partner with Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, to deport undocumented individuals? The answer they give is, partnering with ICE would go against our mission to make Chicago the most immigrant-friendly city in the country and turn ours into a community of fear for immigrants. Furthermore, enforcing immigration law would take away needed resources and time from the Chicago Police Department. The welcoming city ordinance, in fact, helps CPD combat crime by allowing all victims to call the police and all witnesses to come forward without fear of being caught and deported.
There was no other way.
This ideal right here is one of the principles that has been long-standing. Okay, so housing, schooling, and food is what's being brought up. Now, according to a report, city officials have paid about $138 million to house migrants that were coming from the southern border in 2023. This, of course, would not necessarily be to house, but shelter, feed, and care for them. And apparently, Brandon Johnson had a plan where he was going to spend about $158 million in order to build a base camp or a shelter in order to house the migrants from the cold. Of course, this plan was never implemented. Now, because of these Chicago policies, even J.B. Pritzker had to get involved, where he was planning on spending about $160 million in order to help shelter some of the migrants as well. All this because in the past year, you had roughly 30,000 migrants come to the city at one time.
And to Chicago's migrant crisis now, Governor J.B. Pritzker answering questions today about what the state can do to thwart the continued flow of buses and planes that have now brought more than 30,000 migrants here in the past year. NBC5 investigates. Bennett Haberly spoke with the governor about that and the need for more federal aid.
At the city's landing zone, there are more than 300 people waiting to find a spot in a temporary shelter. The lack of space has forced migrants arriving in Chicago to sleep on city buses or utilize warming tents.
This is a cheap political stunt perpetrated by a governor in Texas who is simply trying to score points.
Speaking at a news conference, Governor J.B. Pritzker blamed Texas Governor Greg Abbott for continuing to direct migrants towards major U.S. cities, while acknowledging that progress is being made here. A new shelter at a former CVS in Little Village opened Wednesday that could house more than 200 people. But Chicago still has pain points. NBC5 Investigates found the city of Chicago alone has in the past year spent $156 million in operating costs on migrants, including $96 million that's gone to Favorite Healthcare Staffing, a Kansas company that staffs the city's migrant shelters. The governor said he was pessimistic that Congress would act to approve a bill that could provide additional aid.
Short of that, are the state and the city just left to foot the bill until then?
Yes, and philanthropy. Yeah, I mean, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have.
Pritzker said he'd like to see state lawmakers in Springfield approve a supplemental spending measure that could help backfill the $160 million the state steered to the migrant crisis in the city. He also hinted, without sharing details, that there are efforts underway to deter more planes with migrants from arriving in Illinois.
As well, the city also paid about $127 million to hire this agency in order for them to lend assistance. So now, if we continue with the next point, it was about schooling, and do undocumented children have the right or access to schooling? Yes. The answer is yes. According to the Office of the Mayor, college access for undocumented students, it says that a college degree is highly desirable for many reasons, including better career opportunities, and the city of Chicago is committed to helping undocumented students achieve a college degree. CPS counselors and career coaches are being trained to support undocumented student success, with over 400 participants already trained to date. CPS Choose Your Future websites provide tools and information for undocumented students who wish to attend college. The Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights offers an undocumented student's guide to college. And then, of course, if you scroll down just a little more, they have other things that they offer: scholarships, Chicago Star Scholarships, Illinois Dream Fund, CPS Dream Fund. Now, included in what was being stated, in all actuality, she might have been on the ball on that one. But that is the nature of budgeting, though. You always have to take into consideration in your budget how much it is that you're going to allocate to refugees and people filing for asylum. But Chicago seems to have taken that to the nth degree.
And let's start with your salary. You are going down in history as the worst mayor in America. Let's start with cutting yours. You making too much money. Let's start there.
Oh, shit. Now, I don't know if she's talking about his salary, which after the fiscal year is roughly around $220,000 or plus, or the other 40 alderman salary, which is roughly around $140,000 plus, or if she's talking about the 2.2 pay increase to the $220,000 that he stands to make as of next year, or even in the last factor, which allows his mayoral pension to be about $3.8 to $5.5 million after he stops doing this. Overall, though, I believe his salary is pretty standard for someone in that position. However, though, I believe that there are some loopholes that you can get through to kind of make a little more. Now, they also spoke about two other areas. One was the budget, and then the other one was the detail of the police. This is where she started lambasting him for his position on defunding the police. He also didn't do himself any favors when he was being pressed and being asked the same question 3 times on whether or not he supports defunding the police. When someone has to ask you the same question over and over and over, and this is where messaging really does have to come across, because you have to apply context to what it is that you're saying. If not, then you allow other people to then speak on your behalf and direct your own narrative. So here was her point.
The police detail you had, the 200 police detail you had, let's start with that. And now let's start with the police detail you had, the 200 police detail you had, let's start with that. Because you Democrats, and you remember you told us to defund the police? Remember, you ran on that. Remember, you was to defund the police? Let's start with that. Let's defund the police detail that you have. And let's put the police back in our neighborhood, because we're not for defunding the police. We need the police. So let's start with all the Democrats, because y'all policy, what y'all push in our neighborhood, defund the police. So all y'all that got police details and got police presence around y'all house, let's start with cutting that. That'll save a lot of money.
Now, when he was being pressed about this issue, this is what he had to say.
Mr. Johnson, this question is for you. On multiple occasions, you've spoken on the topic of defunding police. In 2020, you said, quote, defunding this failed system of incarceration and policing was not just admirable, but necessary, end quote. During a town hall called Police Free Future, you commended defund organizers for, quote, an agenda that actually can transform people's lives, and said, quote, removing ourselves away from state-sponsored policing. That is commendable. As far as redirecting funds, if we look at your record, you introduced a resolution and passed it with the support of others to redirect money from the sheriff's office to other areas. So first, this is a multi-part question. The first is just a yes or no. Do you acknowledge making those recorded and documented statements, yes or no?
I'm not going to defund the police.
If you could answer the question, though.
Yeah.
Do you acknowledge making the statements that I just read by quote, yes or no?
What I've acknowledged is the fact that there are people who are incredibly frustrated.
Mr. Johnson, if I could get you back to the question,
Yeah, of course.
It's solely yes or no. Do you acknowledge making those statements?
Look, you've
Yes or no?
already quoted. What I'm saying is, though,
So you
is that it
acknowledge making
provides
those
some
statements?
Of course, I'm acknowledging it, but I want to make sure that we have
I want to give
context
you the
though,
opportunity
to
to answer
that.
the question, but
Yeah.
I just want to move on to the next part of it.
It was actually a little bit hilarious to watch him squirm in that manner, because in that statement that she was reading, he gave himself an out because she was reading his own quote. Because what he was promoting in his own statement that she just read wasn't necessarily defunding the police, it was redirection. When people hear the term defunding the police, automatically a trigger goes off in their mind, because what they think is that you want to strip funds from the police officers. You want to lower their funding, which would normally lead to them being discouraged so they can't do their job properly. Whereas I think the answer that he actually wanted to give was about redirection. But I've heard him in other interviews as well, which are a little bit fishy. And then of course there was one more statement where she mentioned a tax hike that Brandon Johnson wanted to put in place.
And then let's start with not, and I'm asking you all, and I'm telling you all, aldermen, whatever property tax hike he's proposing, or whatever taxes he's proposing on the Chicago citizens, I'm letting y'all know for real. And now, if you all vote on anything to raise all taxes or anything, because we already suffering homeowners, you all will not be in those seats.
Oh, shit. Now, from what I understand, this tax hike that she's talking about is in regards to the $60 million that Brandon Johnson wants to implement.
Many city council members are still not warming up to the idea of a property tax hike of any kind.
Residents are already squeezed enough, and they cannot afford another property tax.
The mayor's $300 million property tax hike was voted down 50-0, but the latest working plan has cut that down to just $60 million. That's about the amount it would go up if the mayor took the automatic increase tied to inflation.
Well, the fact that we started at 300, then we went to 150, now we're maybe talking about 60. Is extremely troubling to me because, number one, it appears that, we should have started at 60.
The mayor would not talk specifics, saying he won't negotiate in the media, but he made it clear he was dead set against cuts.
The people of Chicago say a lot of things to me, but they never say, Mayor Johnson, could you just cut these services? Mayor Johnson, can you just lay off more people?
One alder is proposing the council be updated on budget data quarterly to avoid the end-of-year scramble now underway.
To be very honest with you, I think there's some things going on in Chicago that they just need to get in order, because some of the things they spend their budget on is really crazy. And then with this $1 billion budget that's coming down the pipe, now after looking at some of the services, it really makes you question, how is this money getting spent for the betterment of the people? Simple question, is Brandon Johnson doing a good job or not? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and I'll see you again on the next one. Be easy, y'all.
People of Chicago say a lot of things to me, but they never say, Mayor Johnson, could you just cut these services? Mayor Johnson, can you just lay off more people?
One alder is proposing the council be updated on budget data quarterly to avoid the end-of-year scramble now underway.